from Buffalo Spree, and just to talk about our careers. It was very nice. And he had a question about sort of, we've been through it all a little bit. Not a championship, but the rest. Ups and downs. And we talked about that. And I told him, and I didn't hear you really comment on this take, but because we said a lot about our careers that we don't really talk about to each other, but we're in the same room. And I said that I really enjoyed this Bills season. And I apologize for being so far into the show and not yet talking about whether the Bills receivers can get open. We will probably get to that. It usually happens.
We got until 7.
But I've really enjoyed the season because it's the best kind of season for a talk show. It's close. If you're in the hunt and it's a little bit above sort of the joke in the hunt, the 5-8, even the Dolphins, are a team like that.
Yeah.
That's not fun. This is really good. Like last year is also good, but it gets a little boring because they're winning every week. And we're talking about how they never turn the ball over and they always take it away.
Yeah.
And we'll just see what happens in the playoffs. This year is also, of course, it has to be what happens in the playoffs, but it's different in, I think, an interesting way. I liked yesterday that a series of callers in the 5 o'clock hour made points to this effect, that people wanted to talk about playoff scenarios and where maybe having the 5 seed is good or ideal. These kinds of, This is what I think is on fans' minds right now. And a couple of those callers were like, this is a really fun year for the race.
The whole playoffs.
And I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I like that it's different. I didn't need New England to be 11-2. Even if they're 9-4, it's the same point.
Yes, right. There's a race. There's
a better race.
A race is interesting. Last year there really was no race. 2 years ago was this at this time. I mean, the Bills they went into the last Sunday of the season possibly being out of the playoffs entirely if they lost that game in Miami that Sunday night. But as it turned out, by the time they took the field, they were in, even with a loss. But still, that was pretty close. I think there's a few things, and you're right, I didn't comment directly on that. I did say, I think before you told this gentleman everything you just said, that it took me a while into my doing this job to not be like attached to what Monday through Friday or even Sunday after the game is going to sound like and feel like based on what happens in the game. Because that to me is no way to live and enjoy. Sports should be recreational. For us, it's not even tangentially related. It's directly related to our job. So separating those things, like learning to just, the results are the results and we'll have a good show no matter what. It took me a while. Like I always wanted the Bills to be, and of course for a lot of our careers, they were not any good at all. And we were just sort of mired in this existence where it was just, how do we keep doing this even? But for some reason this year, I've learned how to not be like that as much, I think. This year, I'm having a harder time with that. Like, I think I've said through the time here, since the Bills became a contender, that I'm watching the games and I just always think they're going to win. I think they're excellent. I think the quarterback's excellent. I think they're generally a well-coached, well-prepared team every week to week. Of course, they don't always win. But watching them, I always feel like somewhat optimistic about them, either in the space of that game or the overall. And this year has been more of a struggle for me in that, like mentally, emotionally, I guess, watching the games. And I'm not really sure why that is, except maybe I'm glad you brought this up. You're helping me sort of think through why that is happening. And I think it's largely how much I want all the people who've been clamoring for McDermott to get fired for like 3 or 4 years already to have to watch him hold a trophy.
Oh, you want it for spite?
I want to be on the right side of that. I feel like, we get accused of being, I do anyway, of being like a public defender of his. And I don't like feeling like that. I don't know this man personally. We've met and talked casually very few times. We've had him on our show, but I don't pretend to know him. So, like, for me to say I like him, personally, would be ridiculous because I don't know him personally at all. But I like him in the job he's in a lot, and I also like stories. And I think him getting this team to a Super Bowl is a great story. Maybe not across the country, because across the country, maybe football fans would be like, wait, you're mad at this coach? What's wrong with you? But, here we're impatient, and I get that. We won a championship, and, the longer we go without getting one with him and this quarterback, it feels like maybe it's never going to happen. And I think that's a great story. So I'm really rooting for that, and I think I'm starting to run out of runway for it to happen. Like I don't think he's going to get to have the job forever if they don't win soon. And so I feel sort of invested in that. And that, I think, is what is making the equation sort of cycle me back to 15 years ago.
Well, in terms of McDermott, how is that tracking?
What do you mean by tracking?
Well,
do I think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year?
They might.
Sure.
I doubt you feel differently about that than I do, where they might, but they probably won't. I mean, what are they going to be, 15% to win? So we could break that down. We do every day. What if what's the likeliest outcome, dare I ask? What's the likeliest outcome for the Bills? They lose in the second or third round, like they have every year for the last 5. So if they do that, where does that leave McDermott? Does it depend on how? That's where I planted my flag before the season, that I just couldn't – I can't have another season where my last game is a loss because I can't get stops. And, this year that might be more likely than other years because their defense isn't as good. But I can't live with that anymore. I can't have Allen reach 30 years old and not have made a Super Bowl yet because of – we can go back and forth again on offense versus defense, but that's been true. Like, their defense has not been able to sort of get the job done in the playoffs, points, yards, all of that. So if that happens again, I could be done. I could be at a point where I think I'd be ready to say it. Of course, if they win, I won't be. Nobody will want to say it if they win.
Right.
And if they go out early, then more people will want to say it. This is going to be a year, for what it's worth, toward this, where there could be big changes in the head coaching ranks. You could have Pittsburgh. You could have Baltimore. Maybe you could have Kansas City. Maybe you could have Philadelphia. Top teams.
Yep.
The longest tenured coaches in the league are topics right now for whether they'll be back next year. McDermott isn't quite that. So there's that you could talk about. And then there's, I think he is likable mostly, as coaches go from afar, if not from up close too. I think he's likable. I mean, there've been a couple of things that, like what Tyler wrote, and there've been a couple of things with McDermott where he hasn't always looked the greatest.
No, but I think part of the reason I feel my desire to see him help this thing get across the finish line has grown is what I perceive as his reaction to that piece specifically. Because I think I really respect this about him. I think someone in his position could have just closed up shop to an extent. Like, I'm available to answer the football questions, and that's really all I'm going to do. I'm not going to get into the weeds with you on a speech I gave in 2019 or whatever year it was. Like, that's none of your business. That was in a locker room, private.
Yep, that's right.
I'm here. You want to talk about? And he did not do that. I think instead he engaged with the author of the piece, Tyler Dunn, and also sort of re-engaged with us in a way that I think, sure, is it calculated? Is he trying to reshape his image in the face of that story, well, sure. But I think I perceived it as earnest. Like, when he talks about learning and growing, I think he's being sincere. And I think he learned and grew. And I really appreciate that about a football coach, because I think that's a vulnerable position to put yourself in. And I think he did that. So that makes me want to see him get it across the finish line all the more. I think, for just, personally. I think, again, not because I know him, but I think it's a good story, maybe even a great story, that he faced that much adversity just 2 years ago and is still, I think he's better for it in the end. And it takes a lot to get publicly torn down to the extent that I think he was and react that way to it instead of just going in the bunker.
Well, this is another micro sort of topic where, just like receivers and a few other things, Brandon Beane, where it's really like we're into December now and we don't have anything close to the answers yet. The season is very much alive. They're not in perfect shape. They're not dead. Like, they're just sort of right there, running the race, and it could end up all kinds of different ways. We've been talking about this every day forever, and I feel like there's just no real clue yet, or certainly like a conclusion yet, on where we're going to be in 6 weeks with them. It's possible that in, say, after the season, after the Super Bowl, so like 2 months from now, that we're at a parade, and it's possible that maybe it's all busted up by then. I don't know. Take any particular area, and you could see it going, I think, either way. I mean, I think their issues are well known. Stopping the run, separation at receiver. We know that stuff. They've had injuries. That could end up being no issue by the time the playoffs roll around. You never know. Maybe they get Oliver back, who knows what happens. Maybe they're in good shape by then. But still, like, it's all something that has yet to be determined. And if you planted your flag, as I said before, as I put it that way, where I did, whether it was just this year or years ago, that I just can't have the season end again with him giving up 30 points and 400 yards with no sacks to somebody. But I'm down 4 starters. Well, that's a factor worth considering in this. I mean, they've had to really scramble on defense this year. So it's not as simple as, well, doesn't have to be as simple as that you couldn't execute again when we needed it. And that doesn't even get to the offense. And, this whole philosophy that they are about on offense is, of course, has McDermott's fingerprints on it too. I mean, I think he's come a distance when it comes to aggressiveness and stuff, but still, like, they're playing football the way he wants them to. When they're good. When they're winning, it's how he wants it. And that's James Cook and Allen doing his Superman stuff almost like secondarily this year, because they really don't have a group that can make it any other way. Like, this is kind of what they built, and there was some purpose to that. So I don't know. What is any of this to say at this point? We got to get to the end and know, and then have the conversation at that point. Right. Because at this point, it's still guesswork.
It's really just a midweek vibes check. It really was what it comes down to. And it's a midweek, and it's, still not but close enough to the end.
But I like it this way. Like, say you like stories.
Right.
This is, if you're at a movie and it's a 2-hour movie and you're an hour and a half in and you don't know how it's going to end, well, that's a good trait for a movie, where it's not obvious what's going to happen. And, of course, most of the time in the movie, you can probably know what's going to end up okay. Probably the good guys win.
Yeah.
And in sports, you just don't have that. So it's really unpredictable right now. And I think that's
suspenseful.
That makes it interesting.
And the suspense is what brings the drama and brings the emotion, really. I mean, if you're watching a movie and you're really invested in it, you are on edge. If it's really well done. Like, the best films, the best art does that, is going to get you to be emotive. And certainly the football games do that, no question.
New England Sunday. It's not over in the AFC East, but it will be if New England wins. And even if the Bills win the game, it's still going to, they're going to need some breaks to get to the top of the AFC East table. 803-0550 for your calls. We will talk to Sal today, of course. Media Day at the stadium, 5 o'clock for Sal. At 4, we're going to meet Rich Podolsky. He's the author of a book on John Madden and Pat Summerall called Madden and Summerall, about their careers. So a little bit different than we might normally do on a Wednesday afternoon during the season. But the book is really great. And for anybody that sort of grew up with that broadcast team, I think you'll find it really interesting. So we'll get to know more about their careers together from the author of the book, Rich Podolsky. And maybe we'll hear from you. 803-0550 is the number. Talk a little Sabres as well off their win in Edmonton. Guaranteed win night. What can I say? You got it. Don't ask how. Doesn't matter how. Plus 172, baby. Go ahead and blow that lead. It's all the same to me. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. Again, our number 803-0550. This is WGR.